About 2 years ago, I asked myself the question, which Winter Olympic sports would Fire Emblem Three Houses characters be good at? And now we're in 2024, with the Summer Olympics being less than just a month away. So you know what that means. That's right, I've created a team of Summer Olympians from the Fire Emblem Three Houses characters. And I'm going to share them all with you today. The tricky thing about the Summer Olympics is that there's a lot of different sports. There's a lot more than the Winter Olympics. And looking at all of them, I feel like Dimitri would be good at everything. But I'm going to try and have different characters do all kinds of sports so that everybody gets to play one or two. Okay, the first sport I have is fencing, and naturally, this is going to go to Felix. This is because literally all of his training is sword fighting. So fencing is going to be the exact same thing, just with a fencing sword instead of just a regular sword. I was thinking that Catherine could be a pretty good choice as well, but I think I'm just going to go with Felix for this one. Next we got archery, which is by far the most competitive sport on the list. I have a lot of strong contenders here. We got Shamir, Claude, Ignatz, Bernadetta, Ash, and Leonie. And I was also thinking Cyril could be a pretty dark horse pick. The reason why these guys are all contenders are because they're pretty much canon archers and they all have bow proficiency. We're going to get a little more statistical for this, but we're going to focus on comparing hit rates because strength isn't actually that necessary for archery. You're trying to hit a bullseye, not break the target. Really, for hit rate, only dex matters. Or at least you'd think so, until we take into account personal skills. Now, some of these guys have some pretty irrelevant personal skills. I mean, what is lockpicking gonna do? You're gonna open other athletes' lockers and throw snakes in them to prank them? But there is one skill that's going to be huge in the competition of archery. That's right. It's Ignatz's personal skill, Watchful Eye, which gives him plus 20 to his hit rate. That, as well as pretty decent luck, makes him a really strong contender for the gold. However, I will say, I think with years of training, Cyril has the potential to become the Jackson Storm of archery. Next up we have gymnastics, a very artistic sport here. And you need to be very flexible, you need to be very athletic, and also have really good rhythm. So who better to give this to than Dorothea, our academy's distinguished songstress and performer. She's definitely very flexible. With a few dancing lessons, I'm sure she'll just be able to nail these gymnastics, have a leg up over all the other characters. Not only that, she has lots of experience dancing in relation to music. We don't know how rhythmically challenged all the other characters are. Dorothea already has that leg up on those other characters. And while she's doing gymnastics, I'm also going to throw her into breakdancing too. Again, for similar reasons. Alright, next up we got some athletics sports, hammer throw and javelin throw. Hammer throw I'm giving to Dadu. He's massive and he can wield hammers, you know, he wields axes and he can probably chuck them pretty far. And javelin throw, gonna give it to his best pal, Dimitri. Next up is a pretty interesting one. It's judo, taekwondo, and wrestling. These sports are pretty cool, I think, because there's a lot of good candidates for them. I was pretty much deciding between Dimitri, Kaspar, Raphael, Shez, Balthus, and Leonie. Shez and Leonie aren't necessarily as trained in brawling, they don't have the proficiency, but they're both either mercenaries or aspiring mercenaries, and in those survival situations, they need to be prepared for hand-to-hand combat, which makes me feel like they could be good at these sports. However, I ended up going with Kaspar and Balthus, and I think I'm favoring Kaspar just a little bit more here, just because Kaspar literally gets into fights in every other support. He's also pretty light and fast, which I think are really good for those martial arts sports. Balthus actually might fight even more, but I get the sense that he does it less often sober. Dimitri would be terrifying to fight against, but the problem is he might get disqualified for murder, right? Like, I'm trying to win golds, you know, not try and kill the opponent. In a kind of similar sport, in weightlifting, I have Balthus or Raphael. They're both very muscular. I mean, have you seen Balthus's like 18 pack? Raphael's pretty huge too. I feel like these two are just a little bit more slow, so that's why I'd rather give them these sports rather than Caspar. For boxing, I have Raphael, and I pretty much have him over Balthus in this sense, because one, Balthus already has kind of two sports. And I also have Raphael over Caspar because I feel like Raphael is just kind of tankier, you know? He can take a hit from boxing. For shooting, I have Petra because she literally shot 2 birds with 1 arrow. There is no way she's not going to be good at shooting. For tennis, I have Ferdinand. What's that saying about rich people being good at tennis? Surely his dad's taxpayer money has prepared him for this moment. And you know what? I might as well just throw Ferdinand in golf as well. Oh, but actually, I feel like Lawrence might be better for golf just because he's a bit snobbier. Kind of want to put in Mercedes for golf as well just because she's not really a physical person. Might as well put her in the sport where like it's mostly just standing still and hitting stuff and then walking for 90% of the time. But you know what, like Hanneman and Gilbert kind of give me golf vibes too. That might just be because they're old though. For BMX or cycling, I have Yuri, and I feel like he'd be both really good at performing tricks and also cycling really quickly. You know, the trickster, being really good at tricks. And next up we have a bunch of team sports, and for these I really prioritized chemistry and teamwork over what each individual character would be good at. And so what I really did was I split 4 teams up into basketball, football or American soccer, beach volleyball, and handball. And I feel like of these 4 sports, basketball and American soccer or football are the 2 most popular and biggest ones. So I wanted to put my strongest, or what I deemed as my best teams, and prioritize them in these 2 sports first. The 4 teams I have are split into Adrestia, Farragus, Leicester, and the Church. And the first team I have for basketball is the Leicester team. We have Claude, Leone, Raphael, Ignatz, and Lawrence. In this team, Claude's going to be the leader. And we're also, this is very important, we're also going to have Hilda on the bench as a cheerleader. And I feel like Leicester would just be really good at basketball because Leicester is the home of the archers. That's what they're known for. And so they should be really good at aiming with their hands. Naturally, I feel like basketball is a better fit for them than soccer. And on this team, we also have quite a number of decent archers. You know, we got Claude, Leone, Ignatz, all really good at archery. And so because of that, I'm going to have these 3 kind of as the offensive forwards. I'm going to have Raphael more as like a defenseman to kind of protect his more frail teammates like Ignatz. He can kind of tank hits and also defend well, you know? And Lawrence is kind of like a mix, you know? He's kind of a filler unit because he's not particularly physical, but he's like physical enough and stronger for sure than the other members of the Golden Deer house. He's also my second defenseman. Meanwhile, for football or American soccer, I have the Farragus team, including Dimitri, the trio of Ingrid, Sylvain, and Felix, as well as the Do. I feel like of these 4 teams, Farragus has the synergy to produce the best results. They don't necessarily always like each other. For example, like Dimitri and Felix, they don't get along. But what they'll do is they'll fight, move forward with that, and then end up with a really good result afterwards. So naturally, I felt that Fargus needed to be one of the teams for the 2 big sports, football or basketball. In this case, I think Dedu would be the goalie, Dimitri would be the captain, and then Dimitri, Ingrid, and Felix would also be the forwards, you know. If needed, I would probably bring Ingrid back to defense, just to have like a 2-2 balance. Because right now, I only have Sylvain on defense. But Dimitri and Felix, I think, are just very good at being offensive, quick characters that can just get in, score some goals, get out, sort of thing. And then I'll also have Rodrigue as the coach. Wait, that might be kind of bad for Felix. Ooh, maybe Byleth is better. The last 2 teams I have are between Adrestia and the Church, so I need to split them somehow into volleyball and handball. Now, here's the thing. I've seen IQ. Height's pretty important for volleyball, right? So because of that, I'm going to put the Church in volleyball or beach volleyball. We have on that team Catherine, Alois, Cyril, Yuritsa, Sedith, and Hanneman. And this team is great for volleyball because Hanneman, Yuritsa, Sedith, and even Catherine and Alois are all really tall. Cyril's the short one, so he's going to be the libero, the guy who dives and saves all the balls that are about to fall and hit the ground. Meanwhile, Sedith is the captain, and Ray is the coach. And Gilbert couldn't make the cut on this team because he's just too old. One thing I love about this team is that my defense is going to be so good. I can literally have a Hanneman, Yuritsa, and Sedith be insane blockers, right? Meanwhile, Catherine and Yuritsa are going to be crazy spikers. Right? They're literally going to be aces. And even Hanneman could be like a really good setter, I feel like. You know, I feel like he'd be able to calculate the physics of where to position the ball perfectly for the other spikers, Catherine and Yuritsa, to jump in and spike and get the point, you know? Sedith is all around just pretty good. He'd probably be pretty decent at defense and offense together. And Alois could be like a really consistent and durable member of the team. You know, do lots of simple blocks, but do it over and over and over again. You know, stuff that we don't need to waste Cyril's energy on. And so since the church went to beach volleyball, that leaves Adrestia for handball. In the Adrestian team for handball, I have Edelgard, Hubert, Petra, Ferdinand, and Caspar. I was deciding between Edelgard and Ferdinand for goalie, but then I ended up going with Ferdinand because I feel like putting Edelgard as the goalie kind of wastes a lot of her offensive potential, her power, as well as her ability to control the entire field and the course of the game. So I want to have Edelgard as an offensive forward. Petra, maybe even Caspar could be offensive members, but I think Petra for sure. Maybe Caspar could be part of defense. Caspar and Edelgard would shift somewhere between offense and defense probably, depending on what my team needs at the current moment. I think Edelgard would be really good at scoring goals quickly, and I think Caspar would be really good at putting on pressure. Hubert's not that physical, but I feel like he'd be able to guide the team through strategic positionings, and I think that is very helpful. He also has a great bond with Edelgard. Wait, what? I forgot about water polo. Water polo, just throw in the Ashen Wolves, right? None of them are afraid of water, I hope. And, throw in Anna as well. There. I feel like that's not that bad, right? We can have maybe Balthus. No, actually, I'd probably have Happy as the goalie, because then she doesn't have to move around too much. And she also doesn't really get intimidated by things, you know? She's always surrounded by monsters and, like, her world tearing down around her. I feel like an intimidating forward charging Happy would just not even phase her, and that's really good for her being the goalie. I think Yuri and Anna are going to be on offense, so my forwards, and then Balthus is going to be my shield for them, making sure that they don't get tackled by the other team, and Constance on defense as well. Oh shoot, there's rugby too. Okay, well, let's put in Kranya, Solon, Cornelia, Talus. Oh shoot, I need one more. Alright, Nemesis, get in there. I don't even know how I would form this team. So rugby, you chuck balls and tackle each other, right? That's what the game is about. And then you sometimes run to the opposite end to get touchdown sort of like things. I definitely think Kranya and Nemesis would be on offense, right? They like attack things all the time. They charge in. Cornelia is all about defense, her and Aryan Road. So I'm going to put her on defense. Wait, is there like a goalie in rugby? I don't think so, right? But Cornelia is going to be on the back end. You know, she's going to defend the line. And then Solon and Talus, they also don't run very much. They just kind of stand there. So I'll put them on defense as well, just to make sure that the other team doesn't score. Honestly, this team isn't that bad. This team's kind of powerful. Hopefully they can chuck ball as well. Alright, back to some more straightforward individual sports. Equestrian. Let's put in Marianne. For decathlon, which is pretty much just a mixture of throwing, running, and jumping sports, I have Leonie. And this is because I feel like she's used to training in environments that aren't very expensive, don't need super expensive equipment. And so she'd be able to adapt to these sports that are more on the physical end, that don't require expensive training or equipment in order to practice. Like, it's easy for her to dig up a sandpit and just try and long jump very far. For pentathlon, which is a mixture of shooting, riding on horseback, and fencing, I have Claude. And I feel like he'd be strong at all of these. Naturally, he's going to be good at fencing. He's pretty decent at horses too, he can ride them well. And I also feel like he has the agility to be good at fencing as well. And even though it does include 5 different sports, I don't feel like any of the sports are too exhaustive, because you kind of just do the sport and then after it's done, it's not going, the tiredness you get isn't going to carry too much onto the other sport. None of them are really marathon style sports. Meanwhile, for triathlon, it's kind of the opposite side of the coin. A mixture of swimming, biking, and running, but each of these is like a mini marathon in themselves. So you're pretty much running 3 marathons. And this, I feel like, is the most intensive, exhausting sport of them all. And so for this, I need to have a very athletic player. And for that, I've chosen Catherine. I feel like being a Knight of Seiros, she's trained to endure very long battles, so she's going to be prepared to tackle on pretty much 3 marathons. And she's probably also the most active and fastest runner out of the Knights of Seiros. She's also not afraid of water. Now, there's this sport that I had no clue existed. It's called steeplechase. And essentially, it's a long marathon, but with puddles everywhere. And I feel like Cyril doing this is just hilarious. Logistically, I'd probably pick between Ash or Cyril, but I went with Cyril just because on his list of likes for his profile, he literally just has 2 things. One is working for Rhea, and the second one is working outdoors. Might as well put him in puddles. For table tennis, I have Bernadetta. Is it just me, or is the idea of Bernadetta holding a paddle, frantically dashing around the table trying to hit the ping pong ball kind of hilarious? Also, it's one of the least dangerous sports, and it's indoors, so she doesn't ever need to go outside. Meanwhile, for sailing, I have Hanneman. He's pretty much the closest thing to a physicist in Garrick Mach, so I feel like he'd be able to understand the instruments and calculate, the sail speeds and wind directions very effectively to be good at sailing. For swimming, which includes sprints, marathon, relay, and artistic, I have Petra. And this is because she's the only one who lists on her profile that she likes swimming. I'm guessing this is just because Bridge is an island and she swims a lot. Meanwhile, for badminton, I have Ingrid. I think this is a pretty good pick because she's very athletic. She's light, so she'll be able to move around very quickly, and she's just naturally pretty fast as well. All of that, I feel like, makes a good combination for badminton. It also doesn't require that much strength compared to other sports, so I feel like we don't really need to worry about Ingrid's weakness and strength. Alright, skateboarding, I have Sylvain. Okay, I just thought Skater Boy Sylvain would be hilarious, so that's literally just why I chose him. For my 4-membered relay race team, I have Ignatz, Raphael, Anna, and Shamir. Yes, I picked 3 merchants and a scout. For sprinting, I have Ash, and hurdles, I have Bernadetta. Just imagine Bernadetta screaming every single time she jumps over a hurdle. And for walk, I have Hilda. For diving, I have Flame, and I think this is also a pretty good pick because she's charismatic enough to be a dancer, and you do need to have decent charisma to put on a good performance for diving. She's also really tiny, so she'll get the small splashes ever. But honestly, I feel like Manuela could be a good pick for diving as long as she hasn't been drinking the night before. For a marathon, I have Edelgard, and I almost didn't include marathon at all, but I wanted to give Edelgard some sport other than just handball. But it was kind of difficult to give her one because there's so many sports that involve swimming or water. For canoeing and kayaking, I'm thinking about characters that would be good at dashing through lots of gates and also speeding through very quickly. And in this case, I have Yuritsa. He can efficiently dash through waves of enemies on a horse, so why not a canoe? Now, we're pretty much just left with the non-athletic people, so these next few sports might be a little bit rough. For rowing, alright, I have Annette. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. I also can't use Alois for any of these rowing or canoeing sports because he hates traveling by sea. Alright, next up we have high jump. And for that, I have Linhart. Hey bro, you're obsessed with being tall, right? Go for high jump, pal. And long jump. Hubert. Hey, you're tall too. Next we have rock climbing or bouldering. And here I just have constants because this is like the only indoor sport out of these last few left, you know? And the final sport we have is surfing. And so surfing's really hard, man. You need to be able to perform tricks. You need to be very agile and have lots of skill. The problem is, I think the only character I don't have on a sport so far is Lysithea. She didn't even make a team sport team, man. But yeah, like for this last surfing sport, honestly with Lysithea, I'm kind of throwing. You know, I'm just trying to make sure she gets a participation award at this point. And you know, maybe her odds of winning will increase if she reclasses to Mortal Savant. So yes, that's gonna be my entire Summer Olympic team made up of Fire Emblem 3 Houses characters. And they're ready to compete in Paris. And hey, some people say Fire Emblem should be a social sim exclusively. I say we need an Olympic game made up of Fire Emblem characters, man. Dimitri and Edelgard at the Summer Olympics 2024 in Paris, sort of game. You know? But yeah, I think at this point I've just assembled the strongest team in the history of the Olympics. Fódlan's gonna win at least 60 gold medals and 1 participation award. Thank you, Lysithea. So let me know how differently your teams would... Oh. Yellow? It's the CEO of Team Fódlan. No, I'm telling you, Bernadetta will be fine.